What if the place that once gave you peace is now calling you back to bury you with its secrets? When Mia returns to the quiet lake town where her sister drowned, she thinks it's just about finding closure. But something has been waiting for her beneath the surface. Something old, something hungry, and something that remembers her name. As whispers rise from the fog and the past bleeds into the present, Mia must uncover the truth before the lake takes another soul. This is a story about guilt, grief, and the kind of haunting that doesn't end when the lights go out. The letter arrived on a Monday, sealed with red wax and the faint smell of something old, like cellar dust and rose water left too long in the dark. Elijah hadn't been back to Elder Hollow in 15 years, and if he had his way, he wouldn't have gone back at all. But the letter, formal and yellowed, carried the weight of something final. His great-aunt Marion, who had raised him after the fire, was dead, and she'd left him the house. He stared at the envelope again, still resting on the dash of his truck as he turned onto the last leg of Route 61. The air outside had that wet, northern chill to it, like October had arrived early in Wisconsin. Trees, tall and stooped, lined the cracked road like silent witnesses, their branches bowed toward the pavement in mourning. The directions were simple. Retrieve the keys from the county clerk's office, sign the documents, and take possession of the estate at 412 Hemlock Way, the house. Elijah gripped the steering wheel tighter. There had never been a time he didn't feel the house watching him, even in dreams. The old Victorian on the hill, with its impossible silence and windows that never showed light from the inside. He was 10 when the fire took his parents. He remembered the smoke before the screaming, remembered Aunt Marion showing up out of nowhere to take him from the ashes. She always wore gloves, even indoors, and had a peculiar way of talking to the walls when she thought he wasn't listening. The town hadn't changed. Elder Hollow was the kind of place you left, but that never left you. The general store still had a hand-painted sign, and the diner still had that sour grease smell of bacon cooked too early. The clerk's office sat next to the library, a squat brick building with moss crawling up the stonework. Inside, a middle-aged woman with steel-gray hair and eyes to match handed Elijah a manila envelope without a word. She didn't meet his gaze. As he stepped back outside, he noticed the cold again. The sun had been swallowed by clouds since he arrived. It made the town look paler, like a memory. He climbed back into his truck and stared at the keys in his hand. They were old, heavy brass things, and one of them had a symbol etched on it, a triangle with a circle inside and 3 notches beneath. He didn't recognize it. He didn't want to. By the time he reached Hemlock Way, the fog had started to roll in. The house loomed at the end of a long, narrow driveway flanked by overgrown hedges and dead roses. The iron gate screeched when he pushed it open. It sounded like something protesting. The gravel crunched under his boots as he approached the front steps. His heart drummed behind his ribs like something trying to get out. Standing before the house was like standing in front of a memory he hadn't agreed to remember. 2 stories of decaying grandeur, steep gables, dark shingles, and those tall, narrow windows like watching eyes. The paint had peeled down to the bone in places, and vines had begun reclaiming the porch. But the door, the front door, looked newly oiled. Its brass knob gleamed. Elijah paused, then he put the key in the lock. It turned easier than expected, and the door opened with a quiet, careful sigh. Inside, the house was exactly as he remembered. Silent, still, and colder than outside. Dust hovered in the air like breath held too long. Furniture sat shrouded under white sheets, except one chair by the fireplace, a wingback chair with faded red upholstery, Aunt Marion's chair. A smell rose around him, lavender and cedarwood, and something else, something faintly coppery. He closed the door behind him. The floorboards groaned as he moved through the entryway. Every sound seemed to stretch too long, echoing where it shouldn't. He stepped into the main hall. The grandfather clock stood still at 3:13, the same time it had stopped the night his parents died. He remembered because Aunt Marion had told him not to touch it. said bad things happened when time moved backward. In the hallway, a painting had fallen sideways. It was a portrait. One of the ancestors probably, but the face was scorched, blackened, as if fire had crawled into the canvas itself. He turned it toward the wall. Elijah decided to check the study. It was just past the dining room, which still smelled faintly of dried flowers and burnt wood. The study had been Marian's sanctuary. Books lined the walls, floor to ceiling, mostly folklore, herbalism, esoterica. Dust caked the shelves like skin. In the center of the room sat a box. A wooden one, carved with runes he couldn't read. It hadn't been there before. He knelt. The lid wasn't locked. Inside lay an envelope and a cassette tape. The envelope was addressed to him in Marian's handwriting. Still elegant, still unnervingly straight. Elijah, if you're reading this, then you've entered the house again. You never should have, but I know you couldn't help it. The blood calls. And now that I'm gone, it calls louder. There are things you were never told. About your family, about this house, about the night of the fire. Play the tape, but only after midnight. Lock all doors before you do. Elijah sat back on his heels. The paper trembled in his hand. He looked at the tape. Blank, no label. A storm growled in the distance. The house creaked, as if turning in its sleep. He didn't want to wait for midnight, but part of him already knew, deep down, that waiting wasn't optional, and neither was leaving. He closed the box. Behind him, a soft creak sounded from the second floor. He wasn't alone. Elijah stood motionless, listening. The sound from upstairs had been soft, too soft for footsteps, but too deliberate for the house settling. He stared up at the staircase, its railings worn smooth with time and use, its shadows stretching like fingers across the floor. He considered calling out, but he didn't. Instead, he moved back into the foyer and retrieved his duffel bag from beside the door. He hadn't planned on staying the night, but Marian's letter had left no room for debate. Lock all doors, she'd written. Before midnight. He moved from room to room, securing each one with rusted bolts and stiff locks. The back door had warped with the rain. He had to wedge it shut with a chair. The windows on the ground floor still had iron latches, something he now found oddly comforting. He pulled every curtain closed. The sun was gone by now anyway, swallowed behind the fog and the thick canopy of trees that had overtaken the back garden. Upstairs beckoned, but he ignored it. Instead, Elijah made his way to the kitchen. It was mostly untouched, save for a thin layer of dust and a fridge that hadn't run in years. The stove was gas-powdered, but he didn't trust it. He lit one of the antique oil lamps from the pantry instead, placing it on the counter. The flame flickered nervously, casting amber light across the tiled backsplash and cracked porcelain sink. The whole house felt stuck. Not abandoned, not haunted in the Hollywood sense, just paused, like everything had been holding its breath, waiting for him to return. He kept thinking about the box, about the symbol on the key, the triangle with the circle. It nagged at the back of his memory, but he couldn't place it. By the time the grandfather clock groaned and clicked forward to 11:51 p.m., he'd returned to the study. The box sat where he left it, untouched. The tape rested beside it now, seeming darker than before, as if the light had retreated from its plastic edges. He found the old cassette player in one of the desk drawers, dusty, heavy, and unmistakably Marian's. She'd always clung to older things. He inserted the tape, hesitated, then pressed play. Nothing. Silence. Then click, a static burst. And then Marian's voice. "If you're listening to this, Eli, then I'm dead. Or worse." Her voice was slower than he remembered, measured, and tired. "This house isn't just a house. You may already know that. The blood remembers, even if the mind tries to forget. Our family made a pact. A long time ago. Before we changed our name to Halbrook. Before we left Black Hollow. Before the fire." Elijah leaned forward. You weren't supposed to survive the night your parents died. They were trying to sever the bloodline to protect you, but they failed. I took you in because the pact needed someone." There was a pause, a long exhale. "The creature beneath this house, it doesn't sleep. It waits. It feeds. Every generation, one Halbrook must remain in Elder Hollow, must tend the wards, must remember. I did my time, now it's yours." Elijah's hand trembled. He paused the tape. The silence in the room felt heavier now, like the house had been listening too. He stood up, went to the liquor cabinet in the corner, and found a bottle of bourbon. He hadn't had a drink in months, but his throat burned for it now. He took a long pull and felt it hit his stomach like fire. What the hell had his family been involved in? He pressed play again. "There are rules. You'll find them in the grimoire. Yes, it's real, and yes, it's hidden. Don't go into the basement before dawn. Don't answer if someone knocks more than 3 times. And if you see the man in the red coat, do not speak to him." Elijah froze. He hadn't told anyone about the dream. The one he'd had for years as a child, of a man in a red wool coat standing at the bottom of the stairs, head bowed, humming something he could never remember when he woke up. "He's not a man, Elijah. He's what we bargained with." The tape hissed. Something in the background shifted. Wood groaning, or perhaps a breath too close to the microphone. "I can't hold him anymore. The wards are breaking. If you don't reseal them before the next moon, he'll walk freely, and he won't stop at this house." There was another pause, longer this time. "You're the last Halbrook. I'm sorry." Click. The tape ended. Elijah sat still. The bourbon didn't help anymore. He didn't want this. He didn't want any of it. The clock struck midnight. The whole house shuddered. It was subtle, barely more than a tremor. But every lamp flickered, the wind outside stopped dead, and then, knock, knock, knock. Elijah's blood turned to ice. Not 3 knocks, 4. Exactly 4. Slow, heavy, from the front door. He reached for the lamp and turned the flame up higher. Then, a 5th knock, followed by a low voice. A man's voice, muffled but clear as winter air. "Elijah Halbrook, I know you're home." They say if you stare long enough into the dark, something eventually stares back. Elijah didn't move. The voice at the door had been calm, almost courteous, like a neighbor stopping by for sugar, but there was no mistaking the weight of it. Ancient, measured, unnatural. It hadn't been spoken so much as delivered, as if the walls themselves were conduits for that hollow tone. He took a single shaky breath, trying to listen past the pounding of his own heartbeat. Nothing now. No footsteps retreating, no more knocks, just silence thick as syrup. He inched toward the front door, keeping his body pressed against the wall. The hallway stretched out like a tunnel, the door at the end faintly aglow from the porch light beyond the stained glass. The 5th knock still echoed in his bones. He didn't open it. Instead, Elijah turned and went back into the study, locking the door behind him. The fireplace, long dormant, yawned with soot. Dust swirled in the corners as he moved toward the desk. The cassette tape sat beside the player like a loaded weapon, but he didn't dare play it again. Not tonight. Instead, he opened the bottom drawer. Empty. Then the next. Old letters. Receipts from grocery stores that no longer existed. A dried-up fountain pen. But no grimoire. No spellbook. No instructions on how to reseal whatever Marion had unbound. He tried the locked drawer on the right. The key from the envelope clicked into place, and with a groan of old wood, the drawer slid open. Inside was a book. It wasn't leather-bound like in movies, just old, with a black canvas cover, its corners frayed and marked with oil stains. On the front was the same symbol from the key, the triangle enclosing a circle. He picked it up carefully. The paper inside was brittle, handwritten in faded brown ink. Marion's cursive, and someone else's, older, more jagged. The first page simply read, "This is not a book of spells. It is a record of failures." Elijah swallowed. Flipping ahead, he scanned through lists of dates, names, instructions. Some crossed out violently in red, some were annotated in the margins. Effective. Lost to him. Never again. A passage caught his eye. If he knocks more than 3 times, do not respond. Do not open the door. Do not acknowledge him by name. He cannot enter unless invited. He feeds on lineage. There were drawings, crude depictions of the man in the red coat, always faceless, always standing near thresholds, doors, windows, mirrors, sometimes holding a cane, sometimes just a long crimson scarf wound 3 times around his neck, and always watching. Marion's notes in the margin: Eli has seen him in dreams. He's marked. Elijah snapped the book shut. He paced the room, stopping at the cold fireplace. Could something really be beneath the house? Could all this be real? He remembered being 8 years old, waking up in a cold sweat after dreaming of that red-coated man standing in the hallway outside his bedroom. He remembered telling Marion about it. She'd told him it was just a story she clearly knew was true. He needed air. Grabbing the lamp in his coat, Elijah made his way to the back door. The chair wedged against it groaned as he moved it aside. Outside, the fog lay low and unmoving, blanketing the yard like ash. The porch creaked beneath his boots. He stepped down onto the overgrown path. The trees loomed like sentinels, their black branches gnarled against the sky. A narrow trail led to the edge of the woods behind the house. He didn't go far, just enough to breathe, to put space between him and whatever had knocked. But the house didn't want him gone. Behind him, the porch light flickered once, twice, then died. He turned slowly. In the second-floor window, the curtains shifted. Not a breeze, a hand. A silhouette stood behind the curtain, watching. Elijah backed up. His fingers tightened around the handle of the lamp. Then the figure lifted an arm and waved. Not slowly, not threateningly. A casual, neighborly wave. Friendly. He couldn't see a face, just the outline and the red coat. Elijah ran. Branches tore at his jacket as he charged into the trees. He didn't know where he was going, just away. The lamp's flame danced wildly, illuminating flashes of bark, roots, brambles. Behind him, the house disappeared into the mist. He kept running until he hit the fence. A rusted iron fence, half buried in the earth. Beyond it was a stone circle, cracked, moss-covered, and unnaturally quiet. The trees bent away from it, like they knew better. In the center of the circle stood an old well, its stones blackened by time. He hadn't seen this on the map Marion left, hadn't known it was here. Drawn by something unnameable, he stepped over the broken gate. The air inside the circle was cold. He approached the well. No bucket, no rope, just a circle of darkness ringed with old symbols carved into the stone. The same triangle with circle appeared again, this time overgrown with lichen. He leaned closer. Far, far below, something moved. Not quickly, not violently, just a shift, like a sleeper rolling over. And then, a voice, faint and wet, as if whispered from a mouth full of earth. "Welcome home, Elijah." He stumbled back, nearly dropping the lamp. The flame flickered violently. The wind changed. From the trees behind him came the faint crunch of footsteps. He turned slowly. Standing just beyond the edge of the circle, in the mist, was a man, tall, still, wearing red. Elijah froze, the breath catching painfully in his chest. The man stood at the edge of the circle like a painting come to life, perfectly still, perfectly wrong. The coat was deep red, the kind that didn't exist in ordinary daylight. It shimmered slightly in the mist, as though wet, and the long lapels flapped without wind. His head was tilted ever so slightly, curious, but where there should have been a face was only absence. Not blurred, not shadowed, just gone. Elijah stepped back, toe brushing the edge of the stone circle. The figure didn't move. He clutched the lamp tighter. "What do you want?" he managed to rasp, though his voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. The man raised one gloved hand and tapped his coat pocket, a gesture. Simple, instructive. Elijah didn't understand at first, but then slowly, the man reached inside that pocket and withdrew something small, pale, and irregular. A tooth. He held it up between two fingers, as if offering a trade. "No," Elijah muttered, backing farther into the stone ring. "No. Hell no." The lamp sputtered again, and suddenly the man was gone. Not vanished with a sound, not disappeared in a flash, just no longer there. Elijah spun around wildly, missed everywhere, no footsteps, no trace. The wall behind him remained quiet, as if it had never spoken. He bolted. Through the gate, past the gnarled trees, his boots pounding into the soft earth until the outlines of the house came into view once more. He reached the back porch in under a minute, panting, soaked with fog and sweat. The light above the door was still dead. As he reached for the handle, he froze again. It was unlocked. He remembered locking it before leaving. Swallowing his fear, Elijah stepped inside. The house greeted him with a silence that was no longer neutral. It noticed him now, the kind of silence that presses on your eardrums, waiting to inhale. He turned the lock and shoved a chair beneath the handle for good measure. Every shadow in the hallway looked deeper. He made his way back to the study, flipping lights on as he passed, half hoping they'd fail. At least that would be predictable. In the study, the book was still on the desk. But something else was there now, too. A feather. Jet black, long, almost serpentine in shape. It hadn't been there before. Elijah stared at it, his stomach coiling. He didn't touch it. Instead, he picked up the book again and flipped to the entries Marion had annotated. He mimics warmth. He speaks only after dusk. He leaves gifts before taking. Once marked, you are part of the line. The door has been opened. Another margin note. I regret letting Elijah leave that summer. He was too young, but he remembered the dream. I should have... The line trailed off. No punctuation. Elijah kept flipping until he reached a folded page, tucked nearly at the end. When he opened it, a photograph fell out. He caught it reflexively. It was a black and white image, faded, but clear enough. A group of 5 people standing in front of the same house he now occupied, though the ivy hadn't yet overtaken the shutters. One of them was clearly Marion. No older than 30, arms crossed, eyes alert. The others were strangers, except one. A child. Elijah. He gasped. He didn't remember the photo, didn't remember the day, but there he was, maybe 6 years old, clutching Marion's hand, standing to the far right edge, barely in frame, and behind them, in the top floor window, a shadow. Not human, not animal, just there. He flipped the photo over, a single word in ink, return. Elijah felt cold trickle down his spine. He needed help, someone else who knew, someone alive. He grabbed his phone. 1 bar, no Wi-Fi, but maybe, just maybe, enough. He typed in the name written on the note Marion had left him, Mr. Greeley, Parish Records. She'd mentioned him briefly, a man who had helped her verify the family line and locate the missing entries. To his surprise, a listing popped up. Greeley & Sons Cemetery and Historical Preservation Society, Door County, Wisconsin. He dialed. It rang once, twice, then, yellow? The voice was gravelly, male, alert. Mr. Greeley? Speaking. Who's this? My name's Elijah Ward. He hesitated. I just inherited Marion's house. She left your name, said you'd understand. A long silence, then the voice returned, lower. You need to leave that house, son, right now. I can't. It's already started. Another pause, a sigh. Then listen carefully. There's a church, east of town. Our Lady of the Hidden Wounds. Go there tomorrow morning. I'll meet you on the front steps. I think he's watching me, Elijah said. The man in the red coat, I saw him. outside the circle." "No, son," Greeley said flatly. "If you saw him outside the circle, you were lucky." Elijah's throat went dry. "What do you mean?" But Greeley had already hung up. The silence returned like a cloak. Then the house creaked. Not floorboards, not pipes, but something heavier. Footsteps above him, in the hallway. Elijah stood frozen for a second, the phone still pressed to his ear. Then he heard the door at the end of the upstairs hall open, creak, and the soft drag of something being pulled, slowly, along the carpet. He grabbed the lamp. One step at a time, he backed toward the stairs, never turning his back to the ceiling. He made it to the bottom step. Another creak. Something soft hit the floor above him, a dull thud, followed by a child's giggle, faint, playful. Wrong. Elijah bolted up the stairs, heart slamming against his ribs, each step groaning beneath him as he reached the top landing. The hall was empty. The door at the far end, Marion's old bedroom, was open a crack. Light spilled out in a pale, unnatural blue. He approached. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, the room was pristine, bed made, curtains drawn, a single lamp glowing coldly on the nightstand. But on the bed, a coat, red, folded neatly, and resting atop it, a small, perfectly white tooth. The tooth was gone when Elijah returned the next morning. He'd left the bedroom door ajar, unwilling to enter, but when the sun finally crawled over the pines and bled light into the hallway, he found the coat still folded on the bed, undisturbed, except for the missing tooth. It didn't make sense. The windows were locked, no sign of entry, and yet something had been here. Something still moved through this house when he wasn't watching. He didn't take the coat. He couldn't bring himself to touch it. Instead, he descended the stairs with slow, measured steps, each creak of the wood beneath his feet sounding louder than the last. It was a little after 6 in the morning. He hadn't slept. Every few minutes during the night he'd heard it again, that soft, dragging sound above him. Never fast, never closer. Just a promise. Now, as the pale morning fog licked the window panes and the house creaked in protest against the rising light, Elijah laced his boots, zipped his jacket, and set off east, toward the church. The directions Greeley had given were vague. Past the grove, down Bellwater, until you see the black fence with no gate. He followed the gravel road for half an hour before the trees began to part. Then, out of the haze, it rose. A church of gray stone, stooped like a penitent man. The windows were narrow and dark. The bell tower cracked along one side. Moss clung to the steps, and a rusted sign swayed gently beside the path. Our Lady of the Hidden Wound. A man waited on the steps, hunched beneath a heavy coat, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. "You Elijah?" he asked without standing. "I am, Mr. Greeley." "Just Greeley now," the man said, waving him up. "Come inside. Too many ears out here." The interior was colder than outside and darker than it should have been. Rows of empty pews stretched before them, but Elijah's attention went immediately to the altar, covered not in cloth, but in dozens of pages, photographs, and charcoal sketches, all pinned down by black river stones. "This isn't a parish anymore, is it?" Elijah asked. "Hasn't been for 40 years, Greeley replied. "We shut it down after the second child went missing. Too many questions, not enough answers." He shuffled to the altar and pulled a chair out for Elijah. "You said on the phone you saw him," Greeley said. "Describe what you saw." Elijah hesitated. He wore a red coat, long, too long. His face, there wasn't one, just space. Like something edited out. Greeley nodded slowly. "He's chosen you." "I didn't choose anything," Elijah snapped. "Doesn't matter. The circle only protects while it's sealed. You left it. He knows now." Elijah's hands clenched. "Then tell me what the hell this is. Tell me why my aunt had this house, why she knew him, why she marked the book with my name." Greeley leaned forward, his tone grim. "Because she made a deal." The words fell like stones into silence. Elijah, the man in the red coat. He's not a man. He's a tether. An old one. Older than any of our towns. Older than the things we worship. He doesn't take lives. He takes lineage. One at a time, every few decades. He waits, he watches, then he steps through. To do what? To erase, Greeley whispered. To remove what was never meant to survive, Elijah shivered. Marion knew? She thought she could keep it contained. That's what the circle's for, binding him to the property. But it only works if no one breaks the line. When you inherited, that changed things. Your bloodline extended the invitation. Elijah's thoughts raced. So this is my fault? No, Greeley said. But it is your burden now. He turned and pulled out an old journal from beneath the altar, weathered, edges chewed by mold and time. He flipped to a brittle page. This was written by Ezekiel Ward, your great-great-grandfather. In 1872, he read aloud, the red man came again in the frost. Father says he offered mother's voice back in exchange for the creek boy. She wept when he vanished, but her song returned. No one speaks of it now, but we see his coat near the orchard. We leave the doors bolted and teeth on the steps. Elijah felt sick. Teeth? Always teeth? Greeley murmured. A calling card, a token. He trades in memory and blood. Why me? Elijah asked again, quieter now. Why not just take the damn house, burn it, salt the earth? Because it's never about the land, Greeley said. It's about marking time. Every soul taken restarts the clock. That code is passed through 5 generations. Your aunt delayed it. Her death opened the path again. You stepped into it. Elijah paced, anger creeping in. So what do I do? Leave? Sell it? Move to the other side of the world? Greeley didn't smile. You carry the mark now. Distance won't matter. He walks where memory lives. Your blood carries the path. Elijah stopped. You said it happens in cycles, that he waits, Greeley nodded. You might have weeks, you might have hours. So how do I stop it? There was a long pause. You can't. That word landed harder than any ghost story. Greeley saw the look in Elijah's eyes and softened slightly. But you can bargain. You can offer. Offer what? A story, Greeley said. Something true, something painful, something precious. If it's worthy, he might accept it. That's insane. Greeley stood, gathering papers from the altar. So is the world, and yet here you are. He handed Elijah a charcoal sketch. It depicted the red-coated figure, taller than trees, arms slightly too long, no face, no shadow. Beneath it, scrawled in shaking handwriting, the coat remembers what we forget. Elijah left the church an hour later with the sketch in his coat pocket and more questions than answers. The fog had lifted slightly. He returned to the house, mind buzzing, and walked straight upstairs. The red coat was still there, neatly folded. This time, he touched it. The moment his fingers brushed the fabric, his vision shifted. He was no longer in the bedroom. He stood in the orchard, a memory, not his. The sky was gray, trees in bloom, a woman standing with her back to him, whispering into her hands. He recognized Marion. She wept, clutching something small. An infant? Then the red coat entered the frame from behind the trees, and the baby stopped crying. Everything stopped. Elijah gasped and was thrown back into his body. He stumbled away from the coat, crashing into the wall. Sweat beaded down his face. He tried to breathe, but the air felt thin, poisoned. And then, from the hallway, a knock. 3 slow taps on the wood. He turned. The sound hadn't come from the front door. It had come from inside the house, from the closet across the hall, where no one should be, and the door was starting to open. The closet door creaked open no more than 2 inches, but it was enough for Elijah to see that nothing should be inside, and yet something was. A shape. Too tall, too still, For one long moment, the house held its breath. So did Elijah. Then the door slowly shut on its own, without a whisper of wind. He stood frozen in the hallway, his ears searching for any sound. Breath, rustle, creak, but heard only his own thudding pulse. He backed away, step by careful step, never turning his back to the closet. Downstairs, he fumbled for the kitchen light. It flickered once, then steadied into a low yellow hum. The house felt different now, not just old, but aware, like walls were listening. He poured himself a glass of water, hands shaking. When he lifted it to his lips, he noticed something on the table, not there before. A tooth. Small, pale, human. Next to it, a folded piece of paper. He hesitated, then opened it. Do not lie again. The story must be true. First mark taken. 2 remain. The message was written in ink so dark it bled into the fiber. The handwriting didn't match Marion's journal. It was crude, angular, like carved instead of written. Elijah looked at the tooth again and felt the unmistakable punch of understanding in his gut. It was his. Back when he was 12, he'd fallen off a bike, cracked a molar. It had been removed in a small dental clinic in St. Paul. His mother had let him keep it in a vial for a while until he lost it, or until someone took it. He stumbled away from the table, bile rising. The house was no longer just haunted, it was remembering him. And worse, it was displaying those memories like trophies. He needed out. The front door wouldn't budge. Neither would the back. When he tried a window, it opened, just enough for him to see that outside the fog had returned, thicker than ever. Like cotton stuffed between dimensions, no visibility, no sound, even birds had stopped. Then his phone buzzed, a text. Unknown number. You have to tell the first story before nightfall, or it takes the name next. Another message, the name's already marked. Attached a photo. It was the dedication page of Marion's journal, open to where she'd written, for Elijah Ward. Blood never forgets, except now. Something had been scrawled beneath it in red. Elena, his sister's name. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Panic tightened around his chest like wire. He tried to call her. Straight to voicemail. Again. Still nothing. He couldn't let this thing touch her. If Greeley was right, if it moved through lineage, then Elena, his only living relative, was next in line. Unless he gave it what it wanted. A story. A true one. Elijah knew exactly which story he'd never told. One he had buried so deep that even saying it aloud felt like pulling a knife from his own stomach. He sat at the desk in the library. The fireplace lay dormant, but he could still smell smoke. He opened the journal Marion had left and turned to a blank page. He began to write. I was 13, and I lied. His hand trembled. His mind resisted, but the memory came all the same. We were at the lake. Elena wanted to come out onto the ice. It wasn't thick enough, I knew that, but I told her it was fine. I even jumped up and down to prove it. She smiled and followed. She fell through. She was only under for a second. I pulled her out, but she never forgave me. Not really. And I told Mom it was her fault. I said she ran too far. I made her the careless one. He paused, stared at the page. It wasn't true. I lied because I was scared, because I didn't want the blame. That was the day her trust in me broke. She never looked at me the same way again. He signed the page with his full name. The moment the pen lifted, the journal's page curled upward at the corners, as if burned by invisible fire. Then, the air shifted. From the corner of the room, the coat rack moved. It twisted slowly. A shadow peeled away from it, forming something taller, redder, broader. The coat, it wasn't floating, it wasn't dragging, it walked. But it had no feet, no face. Just the impression of movement, a suit of absence filled with impossible weight. Elijah stayed seated, barely breathing. The coat stopped in front of the desk. The journal lifted off the table by itself, hovered in the air, then fell open to the confession. A pause. Then a breath. Not his. Swept across the room. The fireplace roared to life, crackling with blue flame. The coat turned, drifted toward the back of the house, toward the stairwell, then vanished just before the first step. Elijah collapsed in his chair. Was that it? Was the offering enough? He didn't move for minutes. The flame settled behind him. The house was quiet. Then his phone buzzed again. Unknown number, first story accepted, and second mark at sundown. Attached, a photo. This time it was his front door, a handprint in ash. Elijah stood and approached the door. The handprint was there. 5 fingers, too long, burned into the wood, and beneath it, scratched into the floor, a name he hadn't heard in over a decade. Benji, his best friend, who had died because of him. Elijah staggered back. The red coat hadn't come for just his bloodline. It wanted everyone tied to his guilt. Some doors don't open outward. They fold inward, like wounds reopening. By the time Elijah realized this, the floorboard under his right foot had already creaked in a pattern too deliberate to be random. It wasn't just old wood groaning. It was a signal. The house was listening again. He stood in the middle of the hallway, eyes fixed on the red handprint burned into the front door from the night before. The second name had appeared beneath it. Benji. Elijah hadn't thought of him in years. He couldn't afford to. They were both 15 that summer. Both drunk. One dared the other to jump. One did. The other watched. Benji's body was never found, but the lake had given Elijah back something worse than a corpse. No questions, no blame, just an emptiness that festered for over a decade. Now the name had returned, scraped into wood like a curse. Elijah knew what came next. The house wanted another story, but this one wouldn't fit on a journal page. He went into the living room, where the fireplace had returned to a dead hush. The flames from the previous night had gone out without a trace. No ash, no soot, as if fire had only been a dream. On the mantel, the journal lay closed, its leather binding still warm to the touch. He opened it. Blank pages, until the center. A map. It wasn't there before. It had been burned into the pages from the inside out. Lines of ember, symbols made of twisted geometry too perfect for coincidence. At the center, a spiral. Around it, 3 initials. B, M, E. Benji, Marion, Elena, the living and the dead. And the ones in between. There were arrows pointing toward a room in the back of the house. He followed them. The hallway seemed longer now, darker. The wallpaper had begun to peel in strange patterns, like eyes half-formed and blinking slowly beneath layers of age and rot. At the end of the hall, a door. It hadn't been there before. Not a door so red. Not that shade of arterial glistening red that looked wet, like it was bleeding from the inside out. Elijah reached for the handle. It had burned his palm. He didn't flinch, just twisted. The door opened into a basement that shouldn't exist because he'd already checked. Twice. This house had no basement. And yet here it was. Disascending. Each stair groaned under his weight, the sound echoing off stone walls that had never been in the floor plan. And the deeper he went, the more the air changed. Warmer, damper, like breath held too long. Then, candles, hundreds of them, spiraling across the room in concentric circles, all leading to a stone altar. On the altar, a wooden mask, carved into the shape of a smiling face, with hollow, circular eyes and no mouth. Beneath the mask was a note, written in the same jagged script as before. Put it on. Tell his name. Bring the lake back. Elijah picked up the mask. It was light, but something about it pulsed in his hand like a heartbeat. The inside was lined with cloth, soft, dark, wet. He hesitated, then placed it over his face. The world vanished. No sound, no sight, no feeling, just weightlessness. And then, water! He was submerged, not in the basement, in the lake. He opened his eyes to darkness, cold pressed against his chest like stone. Bubbles rose around him, but he hadn't taken a breath. And ahead, just out of reach, was Benji, exactly as he'd last seen him. Jeans, no shirt, a bruise forming along his ribs, eyes open wide, mouth frozen in that moment before the scream. Elijah tried to swim forward, but couldn't move. Something gripped his ankles. Hands, small ones, children's hands, dozens of them. Elijah screamed, but no sound escaped, only more bubbles. The children pulled him deeper and deeper until, he sat up gasping on the altar in the basement. The candles had gone out. He tore the mask off and hurled it across the room. It struck the wall and shattered into ash. On the floor beside him now, wet footprints. Small, bare. Leading up the stairs, he followed them, heart pounding. Upstairs, the hallway was alive. The wallpaper pulsed. From inside the walls, voices whispered. Benji's name. Tell it louder. Speak the truth. Elijah ran to the kitchen, panting. On the fridge was a new mark, a photo of him and Benji from the summer before the fall. Someone had scratched Benji's eyes out. Another note. One story isn't enough. The lake remembers. You buried more than a friend. At that moment, Elijah understood. The ritual wasn't just about guilt. It was about remembering, and being remembered by something that never forgot. The house, the coat, the mask, they were tools, instruments of something older, something Marion had tried to contain and failed. Elijah turned to go back into the hall and saw the water dripping down the stairs. Drip, drip, drip. Not just water, lake water. It carried moss, dead leaves, fish scales, and in the puddle at the base of the stairs, words began to form. Alina is at the dock. Come now, or she stays. Elijah burst out the front door, boots slapping across the wet boards of the porch, breath already fogging in the cold air. The puddle had grown, its trail a winding, shimmering artery leading downhill through the woods, cutting through leaves like something had been dragged. Not something, someone. Elena! He shouted into the thickening dusk. But the forest swallowed his voice whole. He sprinted after the trail, each step deeper into that familiar ache of the land. Trees he used to climb as a kid now leaned inward, gnarled like old men with too many secrets. The air hung still. Not a single bird called. Not even the wind moved the branches. It was as if nature itself was holding its breath. The trail led to the dock and the lake. It hadn't changed. That same stillness. The oily shimmer of dusk on the water. That same crooked canoe, half submerged, rope slack like a noose. But something had changed underneath. Because the lake was breathing, its surface rose and fell. Slow, steady, like a chest. Like something waking. And at the edge of the dock, standing perfectly still, was Elena. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking into the water. Elena! He yelled again. And this time she turned, just slightly, enough for him to see the blankness in her eyes. They were open, but they weren't hers. He ran up the dock, grabbed her shoulders. Elena, it's me, it's Elijah. You're okay, you're safe, you're... Her mouth opened, and Benji's voice came out. You didn't jump, I did. Elijah stumbled back, slipping on the wet wood, heart pounding against his ribs like it wanted out. He stared at his sister, at the small girl he'd protected all these years, and saw not her, but the shape of memory, the mask's voice, the lake's will, the ritual's price. Let her go, he hissed, hands clenched into fists. Take me. I was the one who watched him fall. I was the one who said nothing. Elena didn't blink. She stepped closer to the water. The lake rippled, and then arms reached out, pale, thin, slick with algae. Hands that shouldn't exist. Fingers missing joints. One set gripped her ankles. Another reached toward it. Another held something in its palm. a photograph. Him and Benji. But this time, Elijah's face was crossed out. The arms yanked Elena forward. "No!" he roared, diving after her, grabbing her wrist just as her feet left the dock. The cold slammed into his skin like knives. He pulled hard, and something pulled back. From the lake. From below. He held on. He pulled with everything he had, teeth clenched, muscles shaking, and finally, with a shriek like wood tearing, he tore her free. They collapsed on the dock, soaked, coughing, trembling. Elijah rolled over, coughing water, blinking against the pain. But Elena wasn't coughing. She was smiling. Not her smile. "Ben, do you really think it ends here?" she said, voice split in two, layered and distorted like a corrupted tape. "This isn't about one death. This is about everything you buried with him." And then, Elena arched backwards, screaming. Smoke poured from her mouth. The air reeked of lakeweed and old blood. A gust of wind blew over the water, howling like a name. Then silence. She collapsed. He crawled to her side. "Elena, say something, please." She blinked, and this time her voice was hers. "Elijah, where are we?" He held her, shaking, unable to answer. But in his chest he felt it. The ritual had started, and it hadn't chosen yet. From the woods behind them, bells began to ring, faint, distant, but growing louder. Not church bells, funeral bells. And from the shadows between the trees, a figure stepped forward, wearing the same red coat Elijah had thrown away days ago. A coat now dry, whole, and filled. The figure raised one gloved hand and pointed to Elijah. Then its voice rang out, familiar and cold. "You still owe a third name." It began with a phone call that shouldn't have been possible. The landline in the old cabin hadn't worked in years. Elijah knew this. Had yanked the cord out himself when he was 17, drunk on guilt and grief, trying to drown out the static of what he'd heard the night Benji died. But now, as thunder rolled across the sky and the wind dragged leaves across the porch like brittle bones, the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Each note like a nail driven straight into memory. He stood frozen, staring at the cracked plastic receiver, the frayed wire trailing uselessly into the floorboards. Elena sat behind him on the couch, pale, wrapped in the old quilt she used to love as a kid, eyes wide but silent. The 4th ring came. He answered, "Elijah." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a greeting. It was a summons. He didn't speak. The voice continued, low and heavy, distorted with that strange double tone, like it came from 2 mouths at once, one human, one not. "You left us in the dark. You made a pact with silence. But the lake remembers," Elijah said quickly. "You can't have her. She didn't do anything." There was a pause on the other end, then laughter, dry and hollow. "None of us did." The line clicked, but the phone didn't go dead. Instead, a sound poured through, splashing, like something surfacing, then a child's voice, distant, echoing. "Elijah, why didn't you jump?" He dropped the phone. It didn't stop. The voice became louder, looping like a broken recording. "Elijah, why didn't you jump? Elijah, why didn't you jump? Elijah." He tore the receiver from the wall and hurled it across the room. It shattered. Silence fell again, but he wasn't alone. Not in the cabin, not in his head. That night, he dreamed of the woods. Only it wasn't a dream. He was 10 again, barefoot, shirt soaked from lake water, holding a flashlight that barely worked. And Benji was there, grinning, waving him deeper into the trees. "This way," his younger brother called. "I found it again, the place under the roots." Elijah followed, heart pounding. They reached a clearing, and there, in the center, was the stump. It had always been there, a black, rotted thing as white as a table, but now it pulsed, like it had veins, and Benji was kneeling before it. He pulled something from his jacket, a folded note. He read it aloud, voice trembling. I give this name back to the forest. I give it so the water stays quiet. I give it so we're not chosen. The note burst into flame in his hands. Benji smiled. Your turn. But Elijah had nothing to give, and the lake didn't forgive. The dream broke. He awoke to darkness, but not silence. Elena was gone. The front door hung open. A trail of footprints led out into the wet earth, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Not her bare feet. Boot prints. His own. But he hadn't left. He grabbed the flashlight and followed. The path curled like it always had, down past the rusted fence, past the ruins of the old boathouse, until it reached the tree with the nailed horseshoe. There, something had changed. The ground had cracked open. A fissure yawned beneath the roots. And from within came whispers. He knelt and saw them. Pages. Pages from a journal. Benji's handwriting. Trembling fingers reached in, pulled them out, waterlogged, ink smeared, but still legible. May 12th, Elijah doesn't remember the pact, or maybe he does and just pretends. But the lake took something from me today. I think it's waiting to see what I'll take in return. June 3. The stump is hollow underneath. I heard breathing last night. When I left the doll, it stopped. For hours. Until I heard the crying. June 20, I think I was supposed to die instead. But Elijah was the older one. He got to choose. I didn't choose anything. Elijah felt his chest tighten. A memory bloomed. He and Benji, fighting on the dock, that night. He remembered pushing him. Not hard, not on purpose, but enough. The lake had reached up and claimed what it was owed, and now it wanted more. He looked up and saw Elena standing at the edge of the water again, only this time she wasn't alone. There were 3 of them. The other 2 were children, and one of them had no face. Elijah didn't feel the cold anymore. He stepped forward, through the tall grass slick with dew, eyes locked on the figures by the lake. The moon cast everything in silver and shadow, warping the children's faces. Elena stood motionless between them, her face pale and streaked with tears, lips moving as if whispering to someone he couldn't hear. The child on her left wore the remnants of a red raincoat. Benji's raincoat. The other child was smaller, draped in lakeweed and muck, and where its face should have been, there was only smooth, glistening flesh. No eyes, no mouth, just skin stretched over bone, like something forgotten by nature and shaped by memory. Elijah, Elena said, not turning. Her voice was flat, hollow, like it was coming from the lake itself. The lake told me the pact is still open. What pact? He croaked, but he already knew. It had never ended, only stalled. The wind picked up. The faceless child turned toward him, though how it could see, Elijah would never understand. Still, it knew him. It raised one small hand and pointed toward the water. The lake shimmered, and for the briefest moment, Elijah thought he saw a shape beneath the surface. Not a body, not even a shadow, a name. It drifted below the ripples like a whispered curse, half erased. Elijah, Elena said again, louder now. They want one more, to finish what was started. No, he said, stepping forward. This ends now. I didn't remember back then. I didn't understand, but I do now. You're not getting her. The child in the red coat tilted its head. Benji, or something wearing Benji's face. Elijah, it said, and the voice cracked through the air like splintered wood, echoing with the sound of water bubbling in lungs. You made the pact. You walked away. We waited. It's your name in the roots now. Suddenly the earth shook beneath him. Roots burst from the soil, twisting, black, covered in moss and rot. They slithered across the ground like veins of something long dead but still feeding. The stump from his dreams erupted nearby. From its hollow center, pages flew out, hundreds of them, all bearing his name. He dropped to his knees, trying to grab one, anyone, but the ink bled into his skin like acid. Visions seared into his eyes. Benji, coughing water. His mother, face twisted in confusion, screaming in the dark. Elena, alone in the woods, calling for him. A shape, standing at the center of the lake, watching. The same voice from the phone spoke now, from the lake itself. "We do not want the girl." A ripple of confusion cut through Elijah. Then who? Another figure stepped out from the tree line, soaked, shivering, eyes wide and ancient. It was the sheriff. Only, not anymore. His face was wrong. Too long. Eyes sunken too deep. A mouth that opened side to side like a fish's gill. He walked into the clearing and dropped something in front of Elena's feet. A journal. Benji's journal, the real one, not the fragments Elijah had found. This one had pages torn out, symbols drawn in blood, names crossed and rewritten again and again. Elena knelt and opened it. "I read it," she whispered. "All of it." Benji kept trying to undo the pact. He thought if he took things from the lake, it would leave us alone. Trinkets, toys, animals. But it wasn't enough. She looked up at Elijah, tears streaming now. He tried to offer himself instead. The child in the red coat nodded slowly. Then it said, "But you stopped him." Elijah felt the words land like stone. Yes, he had stopped Benji. He hadn't believed him, had dragged him away from the lake that night, thinking it was just another game. Another one of Benji's stories. He hadn't seen the stump bleeding. He hadn't listened. He had told him to shut up and go home. And Benji had never made it back. The water began to glow. Soft, blue light, pulsing in rhythm, a heartbeat beneath the surface. The faceless child stepped forward and the sheriff thing knelt beside it like a worshiper. Together they raised their arms toward Elijah. "Choose," they said, and the name surfaced again, not Benji. Elijah, burned into the water like a scar. He turned to Elena, voice breaking. "It's me they want." She shook her head violently. "No, there's another way." "There isn't," he said, but softly. "I remember now, all of it. I made the pact. I walked away." He screamed for help and I turned my back. His eyes drifted to the stump, the roots writhing, and I heard the name in the water that night, but I never said it out loud. He stepped into the lake. The water rose to meet him. "I say it now," he whispered. "Take me. Let her go. Let the others rest." The lake accepted him like it had been waiting forever. It shimmered once, then stilled. The children were gone. The roots fell limp. Elena screamed his name, but it was already fading, swallowed by the dark. The water glowed one final time, then went black. Silence. The next morning, Elena sat on the porch of the cabin, staring at the lake. There was no sign of him, no ripple, no splash, no scream. Only a journal in her lap, soaked but intact, and on the final page, a single sentence scrawled in a hand not her brother's. One more name must still be written, and just above it, hers. The letter arrived with no return address. It was postmarked 3 days ago from somewhere in Maine, the ink smeared as if it had traveled through rain. Elena turned the envelope over in her hands, the paper warped, heavy with moisture. Somehow, though, it felt warm, familiar, like it had been written for her, not just addressed. She hadn't spoken aloud about the lake since that night, not to police, not to friends. She had buried everything, burned Benji's journal in the woods behind her apartment complex, thrown away the shoes still damp from the shore, even smashed her phone when the voice tried to return. But the letter was here, inside, a single sheet, handwritten, no salutation. They never wanted you, they want who you bring. And below that, a symbol, one she remembered too well. The looped root, the mark carved into the stump, the same one etched into her shoulder now, in white scar tissue as if branded from inside out. She'd tried covering it, denying it, but some nights it throbbed, especially now. It had been 3 months since Elijah walked into the water, 3 months since the night she thought she'd finally understood the rules, only to find out there were none. Just cycles, repeated grief, and names passed like torches into darkness. She had returned to the city, moved into a cramped one-bedroom and taken night shifts to stay awake. Sleep was dangerous. The dreams had started again. This time they weren't Benji's, they were Elijah's. She saw through his eyes, the lake from beneath, the world above, warped and unreachable. Whispers spiraled around him like weeds, and at the center, something pulsed. A heart that wasn't a heart, suspended in roots, watching with 1,000 mouths that never moved. He was alive, but not whole. Some part of him had fused into the thing below, not drowned but bound, like sap in a wound. That meant it wasn't over, not even close. She read the letter again, then looked up at the mirror on her wall. Her face was thinner now, eyes darker from nights with no rest. A small scar traced her collarbone, a remnant from something she didn't recall happening, and yet she knew it was a warning. What they had taken from Elijah wasn't just him. They had taken the part of her that could forget. That weekend she drove, out of the city, through the woods, back to the lake, but not directly. She made a stop first. The address wasn't hard to find, not when you had Benji's old map, the one he had traced in red lines and shaky circles. There had been other symbols, she realized now. Places, coordinates that meant nothing then, but now they burned. The house stood at the edge of a forgotten highway near Cragwood Hollow. Overgrown vines climbed the mailbox. Its front door hung open. She stepped inside. It smelled like paper and roots and decay. In the living room, beneath a thick layer of dust, she found the shrine. Not religious, not exactly. It was made of newspaper clippings, half-rotted Polaroids, school photos, and names. Always names. Dozens of them. Some scratched out, others circled. She recognized 3. Benji Whitlock, Elijah Hart, Elena Rowe, and just beside hers, an empty space. Waiting. A sound behind her. She turned. A girl stood in the hallway, no older than 10, hair slick with water, eyes wide and empty, not angry, not sad, just waiting. "You remember me?" the girl said. Elena nodded slowly. "You were in the woods, with Benji." The girl stepped forward. Her feet made no sound on the warped floorboards. "They told me I could leave, if I helped, but I'm still here. We all are." Elena swallowed. "Who are you?" The girl didn't blink. "I was the first." And then she turned, walked toward the back of the house, into darkness. Elena followed. She didn't know why, only that she had to. That this wasn't about Elijah anymore, or Benji, or even her. The lake had chosen its witnesses, and she was one of them. In the back room, the floorboards were missing. A pit gaped in the center. It wasn't natural. The dirt wasn't dirt. It was wet, soft, pulsing. And from the center, a root reached up like a hand, fingers twisted. At its base, a tooth. Small, human, fresh. The girl knelt, touched it. "This is how it starts," she whispered. "They give you back what you miss most, but only pieces." Elena stepped closer. The air grew heavier. "What are they?" she asked. The girl looked up and her face shifted, just for a moment, not into something monstrous, but into Benji's. "They're what's left," the face said, "after the name is gone." Elena didn't remember leaving the house. She remembered the road bending, the forest growing too thick, her hands shaking. Then she was back at the lake. The stump was still there, but something was different. The air felt changed. The water stilled. No birds. No wind. She stepped to the edge. The ripples began without touch, and from beneath the surface something rose. Not a figure, not a ghost, but a page, soaked, ragged, but intact. And on it one final line written in Elijah's hand. "If you're reading this, you're already in the roots." She didn't scream. Didn't cry. She just closed her eyes, and stepped forward. Elena didn't feel the cold at first, The water clung like breath, sliding along her arms and down her spine as if the lake itself were tasting her. Each step forward sank her deeper, not just into the lake bed, but into something else entirely. A silence that didn't just muffle sound, but consumed it. Time bent, the moon fractured. She opened her eyes underwater. There was no murk, no dark, only clarity. The roots were everywhere now, thick as arteries, pulsing with a slow heartbeat that didn't belong to any living creature, and yet echoed inside her chest like a second rhythm. They twisted in perfect spirals, reaching outward like arms, beckoning. Her feet didn't touch ground anymore. She was drifting, being carried, pulled into the heart of the thing. And then there he was, Elijah, or something that looked like him. He floated, eyes closed, mouth slightly open as if mid-word. No struggle, no fear. His skin shimmered faintly, almost opalescent, like pearl beneath old moss. Roots encased him but didn't pierce. They grew from him, branching gently from his spine and shoulders like new limbs. "Elijah?" she whispered. His eyes opened. They were not his eyes. They were hers, a perfect mirror, down to the flecks of gold and the small crack in her left iris. He reached toward her, and when his fingers met hers, a jolt ran through her. Not pain, not even heat. It was memory. She saw the night they met, the moment he held her hand in the hospital hallway, his tears after Benji died, his voice whispering promises he couldn't keep, and then his last thoughts as he drowned. Not again. Please, not again. Don't make her do this. It wasn't the lake that pulled him under. He chose it. To save her, to stop the cycle. But he had failed, because she was here now, and they were both caught in it again. The heart of the lake opened like a wound. Roots parted, revealing a cavern not made of stone or flesh, but something in between. A pulsing cocoon of tendrils and bone, lit by an inner glow that pulsed with her heartbeat. Inside, voices hissed. They were not screaming, they were pleading. Names overlapped, some she knew, others were ancient. She felt them crawl into her ears, curl around her thoughts. Then the questions began. Will you take his place? Will you bear the weight? Will you remember when the rest forget? Each question sliced deeper, and behind them something vast stirred. Too large to see in full, like trying to look at the ocean from inside a drop of water. Its eyes were not eyes. Its mouth was not a mouth. But it understood her. Not with empathy, but with need. Elena understood then. The lake didn't want her pain. It wanted her memory. It fed on what remained when people left. It was a vault for forgotten grief, discarded guilt, and names that had no tombstones. She had become its perfect vessel, not because she was strong, but because she had refused to let go. Something moved behind her. A hand brushed her back. Small, cold, familiar. She turned. Benji, no longer a vision, not a ghost. His face was younger now, before the woods, before the lake. "Elena?" he said. She couldn't speak. "I left something with you," he said, "so they couldn't take it." She didn't understand. He pointed toward her chest, and suddenly she felt it. A burn just beneath the skin, beneath the bone. A name. Benji Whitlock. It hadn't been written in ink. It had been etched in remembrance. She had never forgotten him. Not entirely. And that was why the lake couldn't fully consume him. The power wasn't in the ritual. It was in memory. She screamed, not in fear, but in defiance. The lake reacted violently, roots flailing, pulling, trying to shred her thoughts, erase the names etched in her bones. But she fought back, holding Elijah's hand, grabbing Benji's sleeve, clutching the names in her throat like weapons. "They're not yours," she shouted into the void. The lake trembled. Its heart began to collapse in on itself, not destroyed, but sealed. By remembering. She awoke gasping on the shoreline. The dawn light was just breaking through the trees. She was soaked, shivering, but alive. No Elijah, no Benji, just her. But in her palm, wet and folded tight, was a single photograph. Faded, torn, but unmistakable. Elijah, Benji, and her, together, smiling. On the back, a single word: anchor. She sat in silence. For the first time, the lake behind her was still, but deep down she knew it wasn't gone, just waiting. Because memories don't die. They just go underground, and across the lake a child stood at the water's edge. Her reflection not matching her face, she stared into the glassy surface and smiled. I remember you. If you made it this far, you're one of the rare few who didn't look away when it got too dark, too strange, or too real. Stories like this aren't just meant to scare, they're meant to linger, like the memories we try to forget, like the names that won't fade even when the world wants them gone. To those who've ever felt haunted by what they couldn't say, to those who've carried grief like a second shadow, this one was for you. If the lake taught us anything, it's that the past doesn't stay buried. It waits, sometimes in silence, sometimes in the voice of a child whispering your name from the edge of a dream. And if you ever find yourself at the edge of a quiet lake, don't listen to the water. Listen to what it remembers. Because maybe, just maybe, you're part of what still echoes there. Stay safe, stay curious, and never forget the power of a name.